Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So all together please. Om Jnana Timirandasya Ganandana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Padmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stavitam Yena Bhutale Shrayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadate Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yukta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Prijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapcha Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishavana Sutadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So reading from chapter 5, texts number 27 and 28. Chapter Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. So since this is a double verse, I'll just read a complete line and then you repeat, rather than just word by word. Because you're all great Sanskrit pandits by now, chanting the prayers very nicely. Probably, yeah. Sparshan kritva bahir bhayam pranapano samo kritva. Oh, that's right. So, see, you're better than me. Bigger pandits. Chakshus chanvatare bruvo Pranapano samokritva Navasa bandhara charino Yadindriya manobodhir Munir moksho parayana Igate cha bhuya kurodha Yasada mukta eva sa Sparshan kritva bahayani Chakshusha Chadvatara bruya Pranapano samokritva Rasabharatara karano. These glasses are no good. Yadindriya manobodhir Munir moksha parayana Vigate cha bhayakroda Yat sada mukta eva saha. Okay, go ahead. Yamano Buddhir Mataji, go ahead. Okay, word for word, please repeat. Sparshan, sense objects, such as sound. Kritva, keeping. Bahi, external. Bayan, unnecessary. Chaksuhu, eyes. Cha, also. Eva, certainly. Antare, between. Bhruvo, the eyebrows. Prana apano, up and down moving air. Samo, in suspension. Kritva, keeping. Nasha abhinatara, within the nostrils. Charino, blowing. Yata, controlled. Indriya, senses. Mana, mind. Buddhi, intelligence. Muni, the transcendentalist. Moksha, for liberation. Parayana, being so destined. Vigata, having discarded. Icha, wishes. Bhaya, fear. Krodha, anger. Yaha, one who. Sada, always. Muktaha, liberated. Eva, certainly. Saha, he is. Translation, Srila Prabhupada. Shutting out all external sense objects, keeping the eyes and vision concentrated between the two eyebrows, suspending the inward and outward breaths within the nostrils, and thus controlling the mind, senses, and intelligence, the transcendentalist, aiming at liberation, becomes free from desire, fear, and anger. One who is always in this state is certainly liberated. Please repeat. Shutting out all external sense objects. Keeping the eyes and vision concentrated between the two eyebrows. Suspending the inward and outward breaths within the nostrils, and thus controlling the mind, senses and intelligence. The transcendentalist, aiming at liberation, becomes free from desire, fear, and anger. One who is always in this state is certainly liberated. Purport. Srila Prabhupada. Being engaged in Krishna consciousness, one can immediately understand one's spiritual identity, and then one can understand the Supreme Lord by means of devotional service. When one is well situated in devotional service, one comes to the transcendental position, qualified to feel the presence of the Lord in the sphere of one's activity. This particular position is called liberation in the Supreme. After explaining the above principles of liberation in the Supreme, the Lord gives instruction to Arjuna as to how one can come to that position by the practice of mysticism, or yoga known as Ashtanga Yoga, which is divisible into an eightfold procedure called Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayam, Pratyahara, Dharana, Jhana and Samadhi. In the 6th chapter, the subject of yoga is explicitly detailed, and at the end of the 5th, it is only preliminarily explained. One has to drive out the sense objects such as sound, touch, form, taste and smell by the pratyahara process in yoga, and then keep the vision of the eyes between the two eyebrows and concentrate on the tip of the nose with half-closed lids. There is no benefit in closing the eyes altogether, because then there is every chance of falling asleep. Nor is there benefit in opening the eyes completely, because then there is the hazard of being attracted by sense objects. The breathing movement is restrained within the nostrils by neutralizing the up-moving and down-moving air within the body. By practice of such yoga, one is able to gain control over the senses, refrain from outward sense objects, and thus prepare oneself for liberation in the Supreme. This yoga process helps one become free from all kinds of fear and anger, and thus feel the presence of the Supersoul in the transcendental situation. In other words, Krishna consciousness is the easiest process of executing yoga principles. This will be thoroughly explained in the next chapter. A Krishna conscious person, however, being always engaged in devotional service, does not risk losing his senses to some other engagement. This is a better way of controlling the senses than by Ashtanga Yoga. Makam karojda chalam pangam naite girim yatri pantamam bande Shri Guru Dinatarinam. Spasham kritva bahir ayantan chakshus charatara bruya prana payo samokritva rasa bhayantara karino yatindriya manobudhiye munir muksha parayana vigatecha bhayakrodha yatsada mukta eva saha. Shutting out all external sense objects, keeping the eyes and vision concentrated between the two eyebrows, suspending the inward and outward breaths within the nostrils, and thus controlling the mind, senses and intelligence, the transcendentalist aiming at liberation becomes free from desire, fear and anger. One who is always in this state is certainly liberated. Yes, so Prabhupada's purport is very wonderful. He puts everything in perspective. Krishna here is telling Arjuna, especially in this chapter, to become antirmukh, bahirmukh, antirmukh. Bahirmukh, the word is there, bahir. Bahirmukh means the attitude of the soul is outward to the material senses, objects. Through the body and the mind, he is perceiving the external world. And so therefore he reciprocates with the material energy. This is the materially conditioned state. However, for any yoga practice, the pratyahar mentioned there, the senses, the attitude of the soul must be withdrawn from the external sense objects and focused on the Supreme. And thereby, with the consciousness of the soul, rather than the material senses, this transcendental Lord is realized. So this is the basic principle of yoga. So in this section of the Gita, Krishna is teaching Ashtanga Yoga, explaining it, but in the devotional light. Because the Gita is the summation of the Upanishads in the Mahabharata, just in the same way that the Vedanta Sutra is the summation of the Upanishads from the Vedas, the Mahabharata is the fifth Veda, especially written for Kali Yuga by Vedavyas. So, in the Gita, in summary form, all the yogic paths are displayed. That ultimately, though, as Prabhupada summarized at the end of the purport, the aim is bhakti. Those paths of yoga are karma, jnana, Ashtanga Yoga, and bhakti. So karma yoga has been described, we've been discussing it. That karma yoga, karma means work or material duties. In this context, 5,000 years ago, that meant your varnashram duties, guna karma vibhagasham. That one should perform them not for a material fruit, but for the Supreme, for the satisfaction of the Supreme, karma yoga. But Lord Chaitanya, in his discussion with Ramananda Roy, said this is external. It is beneficial, it is a Vedic path, it is to be practiced, but it is for those on the bodily platform without knowledge. And there's a tendency to do that. I am doing this material duty for the Supreme Lord. Very good, you're doing it for the Supreme Lord, but your identity is, your attitude is still externalized to some degree, that I am this material body, I have material duties in this material world. Above that is Jnana Yoga, where there is more of a perception of the Supreme, and then one is using the intelligence. Karma Yoga you can associate with the body, Jnana Yoga you can associate with the mind. And so with the mind, the intelligence, the buddhi, then the Jnana Yogi studies the Upanishads and knowledge and tries to discriminate matter and spirit, Vijnana, and thereby go to spirit as his contemplation. Now that leads to Ashtanga Yoga, because in Ashtanga Yoga the concentration, as Prabhupada said in the purport there, is on spirit, but a more personal manifestation of spirit, the Supersoul, upon which the whole material creation, the devas, the Brahman, material energy rests. So in that system, as is described in these verses, the attitude of the soul, of the yogi, is to pull pratyahara, to control the senses and fix the consciousness on the Supersoul within the heart. So that is entering into a personal conception. So that is further progress. So karma, jnana, yoga, and then bhakti. Bhakti is the ultimate yoga. Yoga means plus or union. So bhakti aims at the Supreme Personality. So you can separate all these very easily into the material energy, karma yoga, the mental energy or the mental body, jnana yoga, and then Ashtanga, which is also, there is a tendency in the jnana yoga system to consider beyond the material energy there is spirit. So that is aiming at the Brahman, if you like, a Brahman conception where the Brahmajyoti, the radiance of Krishna, becomes conceived by the jnani. And then above that, the super soul for Ashtanga yoga, and then above that, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is what Prabhupada in many lectures, on the 6th chapter actually, there is a series of lectures called Yoga or something, about 20 lectures. And Prabhupada calls this assembly the Yoga Ladder. And the aim of it is to go to the Supreme Personality of Godhead ultimately, step by step. But Prabhupada always emphasized that in Kali Yuga, because of the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, you can go directly through hearing and chanting, you can go directly to the Bhagavatam. And though these things were enunciated by Ramananda Roy to Lord Chaitanya, only when Ramananda came to Shruti Gatam, the verse spoken by Lord Brahma in the 14th chapter of the 10th canto, was that Stane Shruti Gatam. That means you should stay in whatever position and hear about the Supreme Lord, Shravanam. And then you should chant about Him. So this is Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, the Nava-Vida Bhakti, the 9 items of Bhakti. And that aims directly at the Supreme Lord. And in Kali Yuga, by the grace of Lord Chaitanya, that is fully available. So it is not necessary to do your material duties very nicely and then cultivate knowledge of the Upanishads and then do Ashtanga Yoga in this ladder format. But rather you can go immediately to chanting and hearing and chanting the Bhagavatam. And then the chanting means Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. So in this way, the energy of the soul is fixed directly upon Krishna in Golok, Vrindavan and Gokul. One can consider the soul as an amazing thing. Krishna says, people hear about the soul and find the soul amazing. Yes, it is. The soul, you see, is like a battery it is like a power plant which is generating eternally consciousness. It is Parapakriti, Satchidananda Vigraha. It is eternal, conscious, blissful, and with form and personality, Vigraha. So in the material world, the attitude of the soul for the materially conditioned person is in this Bahirmukh state. So the whole purpose of the Vedas is to turn that consciousness to the Supreme Lord. And there is a full range, just like a rainbow. This consciousness of the power station soul, when it is focused on the material energy, the soul becomes enwrapped in consideration of material duality and becomes distracted by the material sense objects. However, when the soul is on the transcendental attitude, he becomes immersed in Krishna consciousness. So in the material, and you can understand wherever the soul who is generating consciousness, Vibhinangsa, he is independent, he has the ability to focus the soul, his attitude where he wants. So to refocus the soul on the spiritual platform, knowledge and renunciation is imperative. The conditioned soul without knowledge focuses his attention in the external world. Those that are enwrapped by the mode of ignorance, this is the Rakshasa, they try to control the material energy. Rakshasa. They want to conquer the material energy. They talk about conquering space or conquering nature, exploiting the material world. This is very Kali Yuga, and it is all over the world now. These governments, the scientists, educational system, they teach people there's nothing but the material energy, so we should conquer it and exploit it. So this is Rakshasbhav, mood of Tamagun, ignorance. On the other end of the scale, the Supreme Lord is the controller, but the Rakshas wants to be the controller of the material energy. So then above him, so to speak, is the Asuric Bhav. In Rajagun, he wants to enjoy the material energy. He wants wine, women and song, status in society. Let me enjoy nice music, nice house, good carpet, fame and fortune. The Rakshasa, of course, this person, if he disciplines himself according to Vedic system, generally the human being is in the mode of passion. If he disciplines himself through marriage and a sense of duty through varnashram activities, he can go up to the mode of goodness. But if, as everybody is being encouraged nowadays, if he just enjoys in an undisciplined way, taking drugs, sex, undisciplined, not through marriage, prostitution, enjoy, he will go down to Tamagun. So human beings, they're in this passionate mode generally, but we see, because of the ignorance of this materialistic society, people are becoming more and more degraded. You can understand it in this way. They are becoming degraded from the mode of passion to the mode of ignorance. And so they're becoming more and more degraded. And therefore we have, instead of marriage, now they have marriage or homosexual marriage. The Rakshasas, this is another means of domination and perversion in the most darkest mode. So this is being prescribed to the world as liberality, advanced consciousness, but it is legitimizing something from the most low modes. If you know Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, that Lord Brahma, he produced the Rakshasas from his anus. Then they approached him to have sex, so he cast off that body into the form of twilight, and the Rakshasas ran after this, saying, kill him, dominate him in this way. So nowadays, these degraded activities, the institution of marriage is under attack, and people are becoming encouraged, just do it, just enjoy. So the natural passion of the human society is going down to Rakshas, ignorance, and animal life. But then, above the passionate mode, if the passionate human being disciplines himself through marriage and societal duty and duty to wife and children and duty to society, then he can develop a more pious attitude, and then his consciousness from this power station soul goes to the mode of goodness. And so therefore you also find in human society people in the mode of goodness. They want to live in harmony. The Rakshasa wants to dominate in an angry, aggressive manner the material energy. The Asura wants in passion, he wants to enjoy. The person in the mode of goodness, what you hear about, they want to live in harmony and peaceful, and they have romantic conceptions. They write poetry about love and harmony and beauty. But they are still on the material platform. But they are on the platform, and therefore they become more likely to become vegetarian. They become more attuned to the environment. They don't want to pollute the rivers or the land. They want to eat natural food. The Rakshasa, he wants to even change the genetic structure of a potato. He's so foolish in his drive to control. But the person in the mode of goodness, so that kind of person naturally takes to a form of meditation and peacefulness. And there are many religious systems that come out of this. One example is prevalent in China, called the Tao or Taoism. They believe yin and yang, balance, wu wei. That idea is that you have desire, but your desire should be in harmony with the universe. That the problems in human society is because your desire is aggressive, passionate, but rather through Tai Chi. I stayed 2 times, long period, in Taipei and Taiwan, and every morning the Chinese stand on the street corner and they do their Tai Chi. Many all over. And the idea is that they should get in balance with the natural environment. The conception is the planets and the nature, environment, the plants and the seas and the rivers, they are flowing harmoniously. So you should also be in harmony with the universe and live in a natural, functional manner. Blend your desire with the natural environment. Yin and yang should be balanced. So still that is on the material platform, but you can see how, through that example, how the people in the mode of goodness, they have some conception about balance and harmony. Now then along come the transcendentalists, because let's say the Tao people or the harmonious people, they are still trying to enjoy the material energy, but in a more harmonious way. And as Krishna will explain later, those in the mode of goodness, they feel a sense of happiness and fulfillment. Because when this fear and anger mentioned here, when this is cancelled out and the soul is in a balanced, peaceful manner, then the consciousness is peaceful. So the natural anand of the soul comes forward. When somebody is angry and lusty, ignorance and passion, they're not happy. They're in stress. But if somebody's in harmony and peaceful, then he can enjoy the finer things of the material energy, and the natural bliss of the soul, Satchidananda, soul, will come forward. The consciousness will become more clear. But at this point, the Buddhist or the Voidist come forward and they say, instead of just being in harmony with the mode of goodness, of course they may not know anything, but in harmony with nature and living peacefully. And actually, as a side, I know because through living in Taipei, I know many Chinese people, and generally they were the sophisticated, intelligent ones that were not drinking and following the Western Rakshasa model. They are very peaceful, nice. You can do anything as long as you don't disturb anyone else. They have this attitude of tolerance. So anyway, the voidist comes along and says, it's okay to be peaceful and joyous in the material world, but really, because of desire, you're still involved in the cycle of birth and death. So what you should do, this is the voidistic or Buddhistic mode comes forward now. You should kill your desire. You should strive for Nirvana. Nirvana means no forest. It is a Vedic conception. This is how Shankaracharya defeated Buddhism. He said, where do you get this conception of Nirvana? It's coming from the Vedas. You reject the Vedas, but the goal of your Buddhistic practice is enunciated in the Vedas. Nirvana means no forest, no material forest. You'll see this in the 5th canto in the Bhagavatam. So they say that don't harmonize with material nature and worship your forefathers and so on and live peacefully, but actually strive for non-existence, and then you become free of the cycle of birth and death. Because they will say, look, even though you're living in harmony in the mode of goodness, still you're suffering. You're suffering janmu, mrityu, jara, vyadi. So it's better to just non-exist. Nirvana. Of course, then out of this is spread by Buddha, who was incarnation of Krishna, and I know also that if you go out into Asian countries, though Buddha taught ultimately in the pristine form this idea of voidism, because the natural nature of the soul shines through, they're all worshipping Buddha as the supreme. And they're all in all the Buddhistic temples, they're worshipping with incense and flowers, and many of them are vegetarian, and if you're vegetarian they respect you and they say that's very good. So they naturally develop bhakti. So the voidism, because of this arrangement of Krishna through Buddha, his expansion, they also become attracted to bhakti. And also in the voidistic type is the voidistic, the people, this is the material scientists. They are teaching, right, that everything came from nothing, right? Nothing exploded, and then we got everything. Of course, they changed their theory. Prabhupada in many lectures, he says there was a chunk and it exploded. So you may know, you may not know, before this everything came from nothing idea, a few decades ago, the material scientists were saying all the matter was compressed into a chunk. So Prabhupada heard this in his day, and it was a few thousand miles. It became smaller as the scientists, all their knowledge is just mental speculation. And this chunk became down to a few thousand. And then somebody came along with the idea, well actually it was nothing that everything came from. So of course nothing by definition does not exist. So if it's not there in the first place, how it can explain? I've said this many times, right? So if nothing exploded, it means there was no explosion. But for the material scientist, the nothing is something that exploded. But if nothing is something, it's not nothing. So anyway, just like if you tell a child, if your child says to you, Daddy, I want some chocolate and toffees. It's okay, go to the corner shop. And the child says, well, I have nothing. I don't have any money. So don't worry, from nothing everything comes. What will the child say? Well, no, you've got to have some You've got to have some rupees, and then you can get a bar of chocolate. You can't get, like I gave the example of a donkey. If the donkey's eating grass, and you say to the donkey, the grass came from nothing, what will the donkey say? He'll say, you're as stupid as a mule. Huh? Every donkey knows that the grass comes from the earth. Everything comes from something. But anyway, so the material scientists now, they're going from the voidistic of nothing. Now they say it was a quantum field. You understand? And a quantum field, whatever this conception is, each scientist will have his own. And the quantum field exploded. Right? The Big Bang. So it was but the quantum field is not nothing. Huh? And even if you say a void, everything came from the void. What does the void mean? By definition, it means empty space. So space, empty or not, is something, is it not? So you cannot really hold on to this voidistic conception. And therefore, if you look at the Buddhist monks, you will see that they're very pale-faced and not so happy. They look, they've got nothing to look forward to, you can say. It's all or nothing. They've chosen nothing. Anyway, so the Buddhistic and the material scientists, they will naturally then progress to the conception of what? There's something. But because they're materialistic or ignorant or poor fund of knowledge, this something will be an impersonal thing, like a quantum field. Now this starts to sound very much like what? The Brahman, right? So then you move from the Buddhistic. Now you're moving, you see, the Tao people, they want to live in harmony with the then the Buddhistic, voidistic idea is you should enter the void, which is transcendental, which is nirvana, transcendental to the material energy. But then this void, it's nothing. So that means it doesn't exist. Nothing means non-existence. So actually, if you consider, there's no such thing as existence and non-existence, because non-existence is off the table, off the chart. There is only existence. There's only Sat. And the counterpoint of eternality is temporary or in flux. The counterpoint isn't non-existence. But anyway, so the voidistic or like the material scientists now, they're going towards this quantum field. So this is something, but what is it? It is energy. So now they're going through their mental speculation. Inquiry into truth always bears some kind of fruit if you are sincere, because Krishna guides the soul. So now they're going into a conception that is Brahman. So then the Brahman idea catches the attention, the focus of the Vivekananda power station soul, and he starts to understand the cause of all causes, or the source, as a field of energy. Nirakar, Nirvisesh, Nirgun. Without qualities, without form, without shape. Just a big field of energy. So then this is the jnani, but then they meditate in this way. So now you're getting into some form of yogic meditation, which started with the Buddhistic type, nirvana, meditating on the void. Now I'm meditating on the Brahman, and this is the jnanis. So at this point they practice this kind of pratyahara. Prabhupada explains yama niyama. What is that? Things that you do, yama, things that you don't do. If you study yoga, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, it's similar also in Nectar of Devotion. There's 64 items of devotional service. The first 10 are things that you should do. Guru Ashraya, for example, take shelter of Guru is number 1. And the second 10 are things that you don't do. And the next 44 are archana. So that is Bhagavat Marg and Archan Marg. Anyway, so yama, niyama, things that you do, things that you don't do. Then asana, make the body fit so it doesn't disturb you in your meditation. Then pranayama, that means to control the breathing, and through the controlling of the breathing you balance the life airs. So when the life airs are balanced, then you're not distracted by this outward pull, because this is the yogic thing. All these people in the mode of goodness, mode of passion and ignorance, they're not doing any yogic thing. What they're doing for their meditation is usually getting intoxicated. Drinking alcohol, smoking ganja, taking drugs, and then entering a different form of consciousness. But it's just another form of material entanglement. It's usually tamasic because it goes into... but they do this to kind of quiet the mind, you understand? Usually these people, they take heroin, for example, because it slows down the mind, the materialist. Or they take cocaine to agitate the mind. But they're not doing any meditation on transcendence. But the Buddhist is now, he wants to do this pratyaha. Discard entanglement, as described in today's verse, with the material energy, the senses, get control and meditate on this conception. So, pratyaha means to withdraw. Then jnana means contemplation. Through guru or shastra or some knowledge, you contemplate the shastric or information from guru about what that transcendental object is that you're meditating on. You hear from the guru, it's a void and it's nothing. So meditate on nothing. Om mane padme hum. That means like cancel out rebirth in, insects, animal, human, and devata life. Cancel that out and ring the bell and enter into the non-existence. So, but the jnani, he has progressed to the point where he's meditating on the Brahman. And this Brahman is factually there. It is there. The Brahmajyoti is there. It is the Hiranmayena. It is the glowing effulgence. It is the energy. Because just like we are a spirit soul emanating consciousness, we are a little power station, eternal power station. Krishna is an unlimited power station, and he's also emanating consciousness eternally. So it is this direction of the consciousness upon transcendence that makes the difference between the materially entangled and these yogis. But the same process is there. If you study these yogic literatures or these yoga groups that spring up, 10 people sit in a room and try to control their senses, and they contemplate some conception given by the guru or the teacher from the shastra. Now it may be very limited, it may be inaccurate, but they have some conception that beyond the sense world there is another reality. Some are thinking it's voidistic. Now these people are thinking it's an energy field, and they're thinking, yes, I'm seeing the light, right? You see the light. You meditate on the Brahman. So then the other next step along this is like a rainbow upon which the spirit soul can focus his attention progressively. Then hearing from the Guru or Shastra, Patanjali Yoga Sutra, the yogi will then think that the Brahman is there, but Hiranmayena Patras Satyasya Pihitam Mukham, as it says in Upanishad, Isopanishad, remove your golden effulgence so you can see the Supreme Lord's form of bliss. So the introduction to Bhagavan is Super Soul. So these are the Ashtanga yogis. They dhyan on the super soul within the heart. And often they practice what's called Ahangra Upasana. It means worship Upasana as a human. And as these people, they worship themselves as the Supreme. They conceive of how the super soul is controlling the material energy. The super soul is the basis of the devas. And to understand that position, they imagine that they are the super soul and that they are moving the planets. Now if their guru is proper, they will get some conception of the super soul. But if their guru is incorrect, he will teach them that you are the super soul, but you've forgotten it. This is the Mayavadi rather than the Brahmavadi conception. Because when you're moving into the impersonal energy conception, the lower end is, the Mayavadi guru is telling you, you are that Brahman in toto. You become the Brahman. Whereas the correct conception is the Brahmavadi. Everything has come out of spirit. And that spirit, you are part of that spirit. Like you read in the Bhagavatam, the four Kumaras, they were Brahmavadis before they met Vishnu. So they progressed to the four-armed form, the Narayan form of Krishna. That's in the 7th canto, 3rd canto, 4th canto discussed. So then they conceive of this transcendental object, dhyan, and then dharana means to have an unbroken contemplation. We've given the example many times. It's just like you throw water on this glass, it will run down, but it will run down in drops. It will break. But if you throw oil on this, then the oil will run down in an unbroken stream by its nature. So dharana means when the contemplation on the object of meditation is unbroken. And then that leads to the 8th stage of Ashtanga Yoga, samadhi. And then you find union with that object. So through various processes, Raj Yoga, but basically the same idea. Contemplation, meditation on the object given by Shastra and Guru. But then the super soul, Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavaniti, Sabhyate, is the expansion of Bhagavan Sri Krishna. Right? So through the mercy of Lord Chaitanya and the Vaishnava Sampradayas, this knowledge is becoming fully available in Kali Yuga. That the ultimate object of meditation is the Supreme Lord. His Nam, Guna, Nam, Rupa, Guna, Leela, as revealed in the Bhagavatam writings of the 6th Goswami. So the Bhakti Yogi, Manmana, he wants to focus his mind and attention on, it's especially recommended actually, that you should see Golok through Gokul. Therefore you should meditate upon the Leela of Krishna in Gokul, Vrindavan, which means the Bhoma Leela, rather than Golok. Because the Gokul Leela, the Leela is constructed to purify the contemplating Bhakti Yogi. The Anathas are represented by the Asuras. You know these. If you read Chaitanya Shikshamrita, for example, the Kesi Asura represents one thing, Aristasura represents one thing, Pralambasura represents another Anatha. We haven't got time to go into all those, but you can look that up. And by contemplating those Leelas in the Gokul Leela, the Bhoma Leela, those Anathas become purified. So then the Leela becomes the contemplation of the Bhakti Yogi. And our yogic system means that Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Bhakti, as Prabhupada explained at the end of the purport. However, we can take instruction, because though Bhakti is the ultimate essence of the Gita and all Vedic knowledge, the other forms of yoga and the other systems, we can take the essence of them and use them as support. So what can we take from this? We should take from this the understanding, yes, instead of being Bahirmukh when we chant, we should be Antirmukh. We should chant the holy name as per Lord Chaitanya's direction, but we should learn this art of making the mind peaceful. Even in the Hari Bhakti Vilas, I think it's in the 4th Vilas, Sanatana Goswami gives the breathing exercises that are practically the same as the breathing exercises of Ashtanga Yoga, and he recommends that you should chant, that you should do these breathing exercises, Alambi Pranayam, you may know, Kumbhaka, Bastrika. You can do these before you chant, so that your mind becomes peaceful. You know, if you've just had a fight with the temple commander or the temple president, it's very hard to chant properly, right? If you've just been arguing with the people in the ashram, your mind is, well, kill that. Anyway, so you should learn to control the mind before you chant. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur, he chanted 3 lakhs. What did he do? We should learn from that. The first chanting was kirtan, very loud, the first lakh. The second lakh was upamonks. He was chanting within the mouth, chanting quietly. And the third lakh of Nam that he chanted was manasik japa. He was using the beads, but he was chanting the mantra internally. So you can see the same principle is there. From the engaging the external senses, chanting loudly, chasing off any subtle entities that may be in the atmosphere, then upamans, chanting quietly within the mouth, and then chanting within the mind. Because if you chant 64 rounds, you will know that manasik japa naturally arises. Right? And because it is very hard to chant 64 rounds loudly, the physical apparatus becomes tired. And if you do manasik japa, then you should combine it with breathing. You should breathe in slowly, chant so many mantras, then chant so many mantras as the breath goes out, and you should become absorbed in the name. If you become absorbed in the name, then the Rupa of Krishna will come to mind. If you become absorbed in the Rupa of Krishna, then you'll think of the Guna of Krishna described in the Nectar of Devotion, 64 qualities. And then if you understand the Guna of Krishna, then you'll understand the Sangha of Krishna, Srimati Radharani, the servants, the cowherd boys, the Vatsalya Bhav devotees, then the Madhurya Bhav devotees. So then you naturally grow out of the name into the Leela. And if you hold this contemplation in an unbroken stream, then step by step you will realize the machinery for realizing transcendence is purified consciousness, purified intellect. So that means that we learn to focus the soul on transcendence. So this is the process given by Lord Chaitanya, and you can see these are supporting ideas. Shutting out the senses, becoming peaceful, contemplating, trying to hold that contemplation. The mind runs away, right? We were all turned in the early days I remember on the Bhakta program, what do I do when I chant? Just listen to the chanting, right? But my mind's going here. Just pull it back. So you learn to control the mind. And then as the mind becomes purified and more peaceful, then you should also cultivate this contemplation of the Nam, Rupa, Guna, Leela. You should draw this out of the name. The name is everything. Everything, all the pastimes of Krishna, everything, all the residents of Vrindavan are there. So this is something we can take from this verse today. Ultimately, everything points to Bhakti and Krishna. That is the construction of all the Vedic literature. But it gives teachings that appeal to everyone. If you're a Buddhist, okay, worship Buddha. And then you become personalist, naturally, because impersonal things are unsatisfactory. So if you're impersonalist, then understand that this energy is an emanation from the Supreme Lord, from Paramatma, from the Supreme Lord. And Paramatma is the expansion of ultimately Bhagavan Shri Krishna. What does Lord Brahma say? Ishvara Parama Krishna, Sachit Ananda Vigraha, Anadir Adir. So Anadir means has no source. He is the final position. Paramatma is coming from Anadir Krishna. So Anadi Adi. So that means he has no source, but he is the source. He is Adi, the source of everything. And he is Govinda. So therefore, Susukam Kartam Avyayam. Krishna tells Arjuna that this bhakti is joyfully performed. So when your contemplation is correct in this way, you should cultivate a blissful realization of Krishna. Because through Bhava Bhakti, we understand Krishna. Krishna is ecstatic. So we have to become ecstatic to realize Krishna. You understand? Swarup. Swarup Siddhi is attained at Bhava Bhakti. And then that progresses to Prem Bhakti. So we should study. This is just a class, an hour. But we should understand this whole rainbow and how the soul becomes attached to different contemplations. Because the soul, yes, he's Sachidananda, and he's a knower, he's an inquirer, a Tato Brahmajignas. But because of this materialistic society, everyone is being distracted into material enjoyment, ignorance, drug taking, sports, Bollywood actresses, passion and ignorance, motive harmony. You don't get politicians, for example, you don't get politicians saying, let us all live in harmony and peacefully. But actually spending half their money, tax money, on making nuclear bombs. And so this is Rakshas, this is Tamagun. So how to balance this? We have to give this education to people so that the soul becomes attached to the correct contemplation. Because the soul is naturally inquiring. Atato Brahmajignas means now you're a human being. Now at this time, because in the Vedanta Sutra it says, when the question is asked, the Vedanta Sutra is in a question-answer format. So the question is asked, when should we contemplate the transcendental absolute truth, the Supreme Lord? When? So the answer is given there, whenever mindfulness occurs. That means that whenever you remember that there is a transcendental object, a subject, Supreme Lord, whenever you remember that, then at that time you should start your jhana, your dharana, your samadhi. Because you find that yourself, right? Now you're listening, and hopefully you're remembering Krishna, even from my imperfect words. But then you may go out here, and then you catch a rickshaw, and then you'll remember your mother and what you've got to do. You've got to pay the bills, and you kind of get swirled away into the material energy, right? So the question is there that whenever you become mindful of the fact that there is a transcendental reality, at that point you should say, yes, I'll do my duties in this world for His pleasure, Majaji. And I should offer my obeisances to that Supreme Lord, Mam Namaskuru. So this is the yogic principle. Do not just think it is during japa time, but it is kirtaniya sadahari. And whenever you become mindful and realize that your mind has wandered off into some material thing, then pull it back and think, wow, yeah, let me chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Let me think of the name. Let me contemplate the Nam, Gun, Rupa Leela of Krishna. And then, once you get the ruchi, once you overcome anartha, the distractions and the mind flying here and there, once you get the ruchi of Krishna, you will always remember Krishna. Even when you're on the rickshaw or doing the auto and talking to the FRO or, doing some material work, so-called material work, in your heart, and this is the point, Krishna's in the heart, so form your contemplation from the heart. The jnani tends to think my consciousness is in my head. No, but the root, that is like the flowering of the tree or the plant. But the root of consciousness is in the heart. So therefore you will find in all the Vaishnava literature, finding Krishna within the heart. Like they have t-shirts. They say, I lost my heart in Vrindavan, right? Actually it should be, I lost my money in Loy Bazaar. Or but it should really be, I found Krishna in my heart in Vrindavan. Right? Right? So this is, we should contemplate Krishna whenever we become mindful and that's why Vaidhi Bhakti is so important. We do it in a regulated way, but we remember as we sit down, Seva Sadhaka Rupena, Siddha Rupena Chatrahi. Siddha Rupena means that in the perfected spiritual body, we should remember all Krishna's name, form and qualities within the heart. And then we'll find, when we get the ruchi for Krishna, that we're always remembering Krishna in the heart, no matter what we're doing externally. And that's what Prabhupada means when he says, and he says it many times, but if you become Krishna conscious, what was that last sentence? This is a better way of controlling the senses than by Ashtanga Yoga. Why? Because this is contemplation of Satchidananda, Swarupananda, Sri Krishna, who is Govinda, Anadi Adi Govinda, gives pleasure. So we have to contemplate that ultimate Supreme Lord, who is Sarva Karana Karana. And that will be the perfection of yoga practice. That's why it is better. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhaktir Uchite. Krishna is the master of the senses. So in bhakti, instead of Ashtanga Yoga, we don't think the Ashtanga Yoga, I'll control my senses by this yogic process. But Rishikena Rishikesha means that you pray to Krishna and you offer your senses in His service. So you pray to Krishna and you say, Krishna, I can't control my senses, but you control them. I give them to you. And as we saw in the prayers of Akura, if you want to attain this remembrance of Krishna, Sudha Bhakata Charana Renu. Service to the pure devotees is the root of the creeper of devotion. So you may have an unregulated mind. We all have, because we have this material body. If you want to really get the gift of remembrance, you serve the pure devotees. Yasya prasada Bhagavat prasada. Therefore, this is the sublime nature of bhakti which Prabhupada is talking. Because we're not thinking, I'm doing my work for Krishna, karma yoga, jnana yoga. I'm using my intelligence to figure out the difference between matter and spirit, jnana yoga. I'm not trying to control my life airs and contemplate with a sense of I am the doer. No, in bhakti yoga we say, Krishna, you take my senses, you control my mind, and engage me in the service of the pure devotees. Sudha Bhakata Charana Rena. And that is the essence, the perfectional point of bhakti. Srila Prabhupada Bhagavad Gita Harinam Sankirtana Ki Jai.